doing tests on it Aleph Hayom, just quoted the statement of Rabbi Yochanan that Aser Ta'aser again, give Meiser in order that you will become wealthy. That's the passage. Now we're going to bring down a story, an encounter between Rabbi Yochanan and his nephew. Ashkeche Rabbi Yochanan Yenuka Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan encountered his nephew. His sister ended up marrying Reish Lakish, so Reish Lakish's son. So Amar Lei, he asked him, Ema li psukecha, tell me a pasuk. So the child responds, Amar Lei, Aser Ta'aser. Quotes that pasuk. Then Amar Lei, here often Amar Lei switches, but here Rashi points out Amar Lei is now the child responding again. So the child says Aser Ta'aser, then the child asks, while I'm on this pasuk, so he asked Rabbi Yochanan, Umay Aser Ta'aser, what does this mean? Why are we using the double lashon? Amar Lei, Aser Bishvil Shetis Asher, so you give them the same drasha. If you give Meiser, you will become wealthy. So Amar Lei, the nephew responds, Min alach, how do you know this? Amar Lei says, B'zil Nasi, go ahead and try and you'll see. So Amar Lei, the nephew responds, Umi Shari Linsui LaKadosh Baruch Hu, are we allowed to test HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The Haksiv, the Pasuk says, Lo Tinasu Es Hashem, we're not allowed to test Hashem. So Amar Lei, Rabbi Yochanan responds, Hachi Amar Rabbi Hoshaya. Rabbi Hoshaya taught Chut Mizo. You're right. You're never allowed to test Hashem. This is the exception. Chut Mizo, except for this case. How do we know that? Shnei Amar quotes a pasuk from Malachi. Hashem says, Haviyu es kol ha'maaser el beis ha'otzar. You shall bring all your maaser to the storage house. Vihi terep bevesi. And Hashem saying it should be almost food in my house. Uvechanuni nabazos, and you can test me in this matter. Amar Hashem tzvakos, said Hashem, im lo aftach lachem es arubos hashamayim. Right? If that, you shall see that, if I don't open up the skies, vaharikosi lachem bracha ad bli dai, and I will give you a bracha until there is really no limit to the bracha I'll give you. So Hashem's saying in this manner, right? Give truma, give meiser, almost, and you'll see it. That I'll give you rain. So it's almost Hashem saying that you can test me in this regard, but only in this regard and not in other cases. So now, just based on this pasuk, the Gemara asks, "Mai ad blidai." What do you mean until there's no limit? So Amar Rami Bar Chama Amar Rav ad sheyivlu siftosechem milomar dai. So we're using the word bli as sheyivlu. Yivlu means worn out. So Rav says that what does it mean until no limit? Your tongue, your lips are going to be so worn out from saying enough already, right? It's going to be so much you're going to be almost sick of saying it. So that's what it means, until there's no limit. So now back to the story. So Amar Lei, so now the nephew responds, Ihabis mati hasam lahai psuka. If I was learning by myself and I arrived at this pasuk, lo havis strichna lecha, I wouldn't have needed your chiddush, your interpretation. Ula Hoshaya Rabcha, or interpretation of Rav Hoshaya, who's your Rebbe. I think pretty much he's saying is that, I would have known that myself. You don't need to come out and almost make it seem like such a chiddush that you're teaching that. I would have assumed the same had I come to learn. So it seems a bit chutzpahdik on the nephew's part. But that's the end of the story. Now we have another encounter between the two of them. V'su ashkeche Rabbi Yochanan liyenuke dereish lakish. Again, he encountered his nephew, the Yasiv. So now the nephew was sitting ve'amar, and he's quoting the following pasuk from Mishnah: "Iveles Adam tisalef darko." Right, it's the wrongdoings, the errors of man, which set him off the path. But then ve'al Hashem yizaf libo. But then he almost gets angry at Hashem. If you look at Rashi, Yivelas Adam tisalif darko ve'al Hashem yizaf libo. Kishe Adam chotei, when man sins, misalef darko. Right, he's almost thrown off his path. Sheba'in ala pigaim. Right, he gets all these afflictions from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then ve'al Hashem yizaf libo. But then he get's mad. Shekoetz v'mer ma'ira li pegazo. Right, but then he turns to Hashem and gets mad as opposed to looking at himself and saying, "What did I do wrong?" He almost goes ahead and blames it all on Hashem. So that was the pasuk that the nephew was quoting. So Yasiv Rabbi Yochanan the Kamatama. So Rabbi Yochanan heard this and was a bit bewildered. Amar miika midi diksivi biksuvi delo remizi belraisa. He's a bit troubled, I think, by this pasuk, because he's thinking, are there any ideas that appear in the ksuvim, this pasuk in Mishlei, that are not at least hinted to in the Torah? So Rashi here writes, "V'lo Ramza Moshe Beraisa she'achumash hu yesod neviim uksuvim." That really that the Chumash is the foundation of Tanakh. Uvikulan yesh smach limto min Torah. He says you can find everything in the Torah. Any hint for any principles in the Torah. So he says, where's the hint to this pasuk almost in the Torah? So then the nephew responds, "Amalei atu hamilor mizi." Isn't this the proof? The Haksiv, talking about the story with Yosef and his brothers, and at one point when they get all flustered, because I think this is at the point where they realize that the cup was Yosef's cup was found. Binyamin's cup, is found with the Yosef's cup is found in Binyamin's bag. There you go. So the pasuk says, "Vayetze libam," right? Vayecherdu ish el achiv. They were trembling. Lemor mazos asa elokim lanu. Right? What has God done to us? They didn't say, "What did we do?" They say, "What did God do to us?" Almost blaming on him. So he says that's the hint. So again, also a bit of a sharp response to his uncle. So now, what does Rabbi Yochanan do? Dal einei v'chazabei. So dal einei, Rashi explains that Rabbi Yochanan, I think, had long eyelashes. So in order to get I think eyelashes. Oh, okay. Because I think the point is it's covering his eyes.
Yeah, so they overgrew.
I think it's the eyebrow. I thought it was just the eyelashes that were long.
The eyelid.
Eyelid. Okay, there you go. Eyelid. So anyways, he couldn't get a good look. So how does he get a good look? He took some sort of metal utensil, silver utensil, and he had to lift up, or saying his eyelids, lifting up his eyelids in order to really get a good look. Probably a good scary look at his nephew. So
sends a message as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what's happening. So Asya Ime, so his Rabbi Yochanan's sister, who is the boy's mother, comes along, Afikte, and takes him away. So Amrulay, she says, "Ta, come with me, Mekame, come with me. Delo le'avid lacha ke'david lavucha." So it won't happen to you. You won't have the same fate as your father. So what is that fate referring to? Rashi explains here, "Shelo yiten einabecha," that he won't give you again this hard glare. Kimoshe nasan be'avicha, the same way he gave that glare to your father. Vehemisu. In Bava Metzia, the Gemara in Bava Metzia talks about. Rabbi Yochanan was responsible for Rish Lakish to be a bandit. Rabbi Yochanan was responsible for, almost turning him around. At one point, Rish Lakish says something which upset Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan gives him this evil, this glare, and ultimately he falls ill and dies. So the mother, who's again Rabbi Yochanan's sister, is a bit scared of this same fate occurring to her son, so she makes sure to take him away before any of that can happen. Okay, that
was responsible for Rish Lakish becoming a bandit in the first.
No, becoming a good person. He made him. Yeah, exactly. He was Makar. But right then he set up the. I think he set up the shidduch with his sister and.
But then he killed him.
I don't think he killed. However, you're going to understand this. However, you're going to understand this Gemara, but yeah, that's his sister was certainly upset, nervous. Okay, so the Gemara continues. The last statement we have of Rabbi Yochanan, Ve'amar Rabbi Yochanan, Matar bishvil yachid, Parnasa bishvil rabim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring rain for the individual, but when it comes to parnasa, when it comes to almost making food plentiful for the nation, he won't do that on behalf of one person. He'll only do that on behalf of the masses. How do we know this? Matar b'shvil yachid dichsiv, quotes the pasuk Yiftach Hashem lecha, Hashem open for you, a in the singular, es otzaro hatov laseis mitar artzecha. Again, to give in your land, artzecha is again singular. So those are both lashon yachid, and therefore matar b'shvil yachid. But parnasa b'shvil rabim, tichsiv, regarding the man, hineni mamtir lachem lechem. So it's I will give lachem, which is in the plural. So let's just read the Rashi here. Matar b'shvil yachid. She'im ein tzarich matar ela le'adam echad. If only one person requires rain, kigon shezara achar zman zrias b'nei adam, that he planted later than everybody else. Oh, shedar be'ir shekula nochrim, or lives in a city full of non-Jews. V'tzarich lematar, and he requires rain. Babischuso, then it will come in his merit. But uparnasa, which means shefa tova umichel l'chol ha'olam, to have abundance and sustenance for the whole world. Eina ba la'olam bischus echad. That won't come in the merit of an individual. Ela bishvil rabim. That will only come in the merit of the masses. She'im rabim tzrichim sova. If the masses require again sustenance, sheshtistach bracha b'tvua. HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh, then Hashem will do so im zachu, if they all merit together. Aval yachid, the individual, hatzarich sheisparchu tpuosav, but the individual who needs his crops to be blessed, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishana ba'avuro din hashana ele kefi birchoseh. Hashem's not going to change anything for the individual. So then now the Rosh is going to ask, okay, but if you're giving the individual rain, that in essence is giving him sustenance. So the aval pisha morid bishvil yachid matar. But Hashem's going to bring rain for the yachid. So that's almost that. That means that he's going to give him rain, that his crops will be normal. It won't be worse than anybody else. If everybody else is having a decent year, this person will also have a decent year. But to make his field, right, to bless his field, to make it a very successful year, lo, Hashem will not do that for the individual. Okay, now back to the Gemara. We're going to ask a question based on a Gemara that's probably known to most people here. Meisvei, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer. Shlosha parnasim tovim amdu li Yisrael. There are three great leaders for the Jewish people. Elu hein, Moshe, ve'Aaron, u'Miriam. Ve'gimel matanos tovos nidnu al yadam. And there were three gifts that Hashem gave to the Jewish people in the desert based on their merit. Ve'elu hein, referring to the be'er, the well, the water they drank, the anan, the ananei kavod, the clouds of glory, which protected the Jewish people, uman, and their food. Be'er b'schus Miriam, amud anan b'schus Aaron, and man b'schus Moshe. So the water was in Miriam's merit, and the amure and the clouds of glory were for Aaron's merit, and the man was in Moshe's merit. Mesa Miriam, next week's parsha, Miriam dies, nistalik habe'er. So then the well dried up, went away. The Torah tells us that Miriam died, and there was no water for the nation. But then it came back in the Zechus of Moshe and Aaron. Aaron went away. Then the ananei hakavod went away. How do we know that? After Aaron's death, it says Vayishma HaKna'ani Melech Arad. That the Kna'ani, the Melech Arad, heard. And then they came and attacked the Jewish people. So, Mashmua Shama, what did they hear? Shama Shemeis Aharon. So you heard that Aaron died. V'nistalku ananei kavod. And the ananei kavod went away. The kasav, or he thought, great, nitna lo rishus lilachem b'Yisrael. Right? The Jewish people are surrounded by these clouds of glory. These clouds disappear. What's the obvious conclusion? Obviously, Hashem has given me permission to attack them. So, v'hainu dichsiv, and that's what the pasuk says. Here, the pasuk literally means again, "Vayiru kol ha'ida ki gava Aaron," that the nation saw. I think that Aaron died. But Amar Rabbi Avahu al tikra vayiru ela vayerau, so that they appeared. So and kedarish Reish Lakish, Damar Reish Lakish, because Reish Lakish says ki, the word ki. Mishamesh ba'arba lashonos can refer to has four different meanings. It can either mean if, dilma, maybe, ella, rather, or deha, because. So now, based on those two drashas, let's go back to that pasuk. So how are we going to understand that pasuk? Bayera'u kol ha'ida, that the nation appeared, not that they saw, but they appeared, ki, because Aaron died. So what do I mean they appeared because Aaron died? Again, Aaron was responsible for the ananei kavod, which surrounded the Jewish people. Aaron died, they went away, now the Jewish people were exposed, and therefore they appeared, and the Kna'ani Melech Arad saw this, and they came and attacked. Okay, back to the Agadita here. So then Chazru Shneim b'schus Moshe. But then again, everything came. Now everything was in the merit of Moshe. Right? Moshe was the only one alive. Aaron and Miriam had died already.
It didn't appear right away. The clouds. There was a period of time before.
In the Torah doesn't make any mention of the Nekavod going away and coming back.
So what do you mean that they saw that disappear?
So obviously the Medrash, the Gemara here is explaining that they went away, and obviously, they did come back. What the time period is, certainly we're saying according to this enough time that they saw and were willing to attack. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
And do we say in whose merit they came back?
Yeah, now they came back in merit of Moshe.
Right.
That's what we're saying. So now everything was in Moshe's merit. Meis Moshe nistalku kulan. Right? Moshe dies and they all go away. I mean, they entered once they entered the land of Israel. They no longer have the be'er. They no longer have the be'er. They no longer have the man. They no longer have the aneh kavod. So Shneimar, and this is based on what we're saying. We're using the pasuk in Zechariah va'achid es shloshes haroim b'yerech echad, as it says in Zechariah that I will destroy, eradicate the three shepherds, which we're saying are the leaders, b'yerech echad. So here we're referring to the three shepherds, the three leaders of Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And now we ask, did they all die in the same month? V'halo Miriam Mesa b'Nisan, v'Aaron b'Av, Moshe b'Adar. They died in almost a year span. Miriam dies in Nisan, Aaron dies 4 months later in Av, Moshe dies, 7-8 months later in Adar. So what do you mean that they all died b'yerech echad in 1 month? Ela milamed shenisbatlu gimel matanos tovo shenasnu al yadan, that all 3 of those gifts that were initially given for the merit of the 3 of them, they all went away. V'nistalku kulan b'yerech echad. They all disappeared at one moment, because at the end they were all there in the merit of Moshe. Moshe dies, they all went away. Sorry?
Could have said it one day.
Right, exactly. But the pasuk there, we're not saying the pasuk of Zechariah isn't necessarily referring to that. We're using it as a smach, to bring back to our case. But why do we bring down this whole case? Here's the key point. Why it's relevant to our Gemara. Alma ashkecham parnasa b'shvil yachid. If Moshe the whole time is responsible for the man, it seems like for the yachid, Hashem is bringing parnasa on the merit of one person. We just said that the parnasa only comes b'shvil rabim. So we respond, shiny Moshe. No, Moshe is unique. Kevan del Rabim Hubai. Since say Moshe's whole entity was for the masses. He davened on behalf of everybody. That was his role. Kirabim dami. We treat him as we treat him as the Rabim. Because he was like such a leader. He was so much part of the Jewish people. He represented really the whole Jewish people, and then that's why it came on his behalf. Okay, now we're going to bring a gata based on this pasuk we just quoted about the 3 shepherds dying in 1 month. Rav Huna bar Manoach, Rav Shmuel bar Idi, Rav Chia mivas Tanya. So these 3 rabbis, Havushchichi kamei de Rabba. They were talmidim of Rabba. They used to go to Rabba. They used to go to a shir. Kinach nafshe de Rabba. When Rabba passed away, so they had to find themselves a new Rebbe. Asu l'kamei de Rav Papa. They started going to Rav Papa shir. And then, like anyone who almost can switch shears, go from one to another. And kol emas dahavu amrlu shmaita v'lo hava mistavr lahu. Whenever they heard this Rav Papa teaching and they weren't so enthralled with what he was saying, they liked their old rabbi. So hava miramzu adadi. They used to whisper to each other, like, what's he talking about? Maybe you're thinking the same thing about me and filling in, but
we're not whispering.
you're not whispering. Good. Chalash daite. So Rav Papa hears this and is distressed. Okay, so the next Amud, Akruye bechalme, ve'achid es shloshes haroim. So he had a dream, and in this dream he saw this pasuk. Rashi just says, the Akruya, the first on the next Amud, Hayu makrin oso mikrazeh bechalom. So he had this dream, and he kept on dreaming about this pasuk. Ve'achid es shloshes haroim, the 3 shepherds b'yerech echad. Right. So what was the dream trying to tell him? Sherotzin le'onshan b'shamayim. Right. The 3 talmidim who were would give him a hard time almost. So Hashem wanted to punish them mishum de mechas v'lei, because they were embarrassing Rav Papa. So Lumachar, when Rav Papa saw them, Kihavu Mifter Minei, when they left Shir, Amr Laho, Lizlu Rabbanan Bishlama. He told them to go in peace to make sure that they were that they wouldn't be punished from Shamayim. The Hagos V'tziyunim, they note here that instead of Bishlama, it should probably be Lishlama, and the reason is the Gemara, I think in Brachos Moed Katan, talks about the difference between Lech Lishalom and Lech Bishalom. Lech Lishalom has a positive connotation. Lech Bishalom sometimes has a negative one. So you can read this and say that maybe he was following the dream Lech Bishlama. Gemara is, I think, trying to tell us that no, it's really Lech Lishalom. He was giving them a bracha. He wasn't upset with the Talmudim. No, that's we don't know. But
Tacham can be Mavater and Skava?
Sorry? He can. A melech can't be mochel on his kavod. Talmud Chacham can be mochel. But again, I don't know if this issue mochel is covered. He doesn't want the Talmudim to die necessarily because of this. Okay, so now we have another story with one of Rav Papa seemed to have very difficult Talmidim. Rav Shimi Bar Ashi Havishchir Kamed Rav Papa. He had another Talmid. And have a Makshile Tuva. He used to ask him a lot of very difficult questions. Yom Echad Chazia. So one day Rav Shimi was walking by and he saw that Rav Papa was davening Dinapa Ala Pei. And what was he davening? Shame, he heard Amar Rachmana Litzlan Mikisufa Deshimi. Please God spare me from the embarrassment of Shimi. He asked me all these difficult questions. I can't answer them. So Kabil Aleha Shtikusa Besulo Akshile. So Rav Shimi saw this and obviously felt bad. He didn't mean to embarrass his Rebbe. So he accepted upon himself that he'll be quiet, remain quiet in Shir, and he didn't want to ask any questions in order to embarrass his Rebbe.
We don't have any questions.
Now we're going back. So we initially said that Rabbi Yochanan was the author of the statement that the rain falls for the Yachid. So now we're saying that Rish Lakish Savar Matar B'Shvil Yachid. Rish Lakish as well agrees and brings another proof how we know that rain will fall to merit the individual. Damar Rish Lakish Minayin Lamatar B'Shvil Yachid Tichsiv. He quotes another pasuk. Sha'alu Me Hashem Matar Be'es Malkov. You can ask rain from Hashem at the time of the late rain season. Hashem oseh chazizim. Hashem will make these clouds. Umatar geshem yitain lahem, and He will bring rain for them. Liish esev bisadeh. He will bring rain for the man and his grass in his field. So now we're going to ask, Yachol lakol. Will Hashem only bring this rain if everybody requires it? Talmud lomar leish. No, Hashem will even bring it for the individual. Maybe Hashem brings rain for the one, it will go to all of his fields. Talmud Lomar Sadet. The pasuk says Sadet, the individual field. And and if it wants it to rain, will it rain on the whole field? Let's say the whole field doesn't need. Talmud Lomar Esev. No, a single blade of grass. Hashem will bring rain for that as well. And brings a proof. Ki had the Rav Daniel Bar Katina Havile Hahi Ginta. Rav Daniel Bar Katina had a garden called Yoma Havi Azil Visayerla, and he used to walk around this garden every day, take a stroll. Amar Hamishra Bai Maya, Hamishra Lo Bai Maya. This area, this row requires rain, and this row does not require rain. The Asa Mitra, and rain would come. The Kamashki Kol Heichad Mevayile Maya, and would come and would bring rain. Only in the areas that needed. So we see that Hashem can bring rain even for small areas, even if it's a small patch that you require. Okay, the Gemara continues based on this pasuk. Based on this pasuk that we just quoted, Mai Hashem oseh chazizim. What does it mean that Hashem brings these chazizim? So Amar Rabbi Yossi. So I think we're referring to the fact that chazizim here is in the plural. So saying, what does that mean? So Hashem makes a special cloud for each tzaddik, and seemingly, I guess, if He wants it to rain for that tzaddik in his fields, He'll tell that cloud to rain, and it will rain, and etc. So my chazizim. So what does this chazizim mean? What does this word mean? Amar Rav Yehuda porchos. It means like these flying clouds. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, it says Siman Lamatar Porchos. If you see these clouds, these flying clouds, maybe ones that are passing by quickly, that's a sign that it's going to rain. So my Porchos, what are these flying clouds that it's talking about? Amar of Papa Eva Kalisha Tuti Eva Smifta, referring to these weaker, thinner clouds that were underneath, that were below this layer of thick clouds. So when you saw, I guess, those lower layer passing by, that was a sign that it was going to rain. Amar Rav Yehuda says, Nahila Mekame Mitra. So what does Nahila mean? Nahila means like a very fine mist. It seems like some sort of mist that's coming down, a fine rain that's coming. So if you have, let's say, this mist, Mekame Mitra, right, you have this mist and it turns into, let's say, a heavy rainfall, Asi Mitra. So then that's a sign that the rainfall is going to stay around for a while. Batar Mitra, let's say you have this rainfall first and then only afterwards you have this mist, Pasik Mitra. That means that the rain is coming to an end, right? It's slowing down. Mekame Mitra, Asi Mitra. If this fine mist comes before rain, that means the rain's going to be around for a while. Vesimanech. What's the sign for that? Mahulta. So Rashi explains mahulta is some sort of sieve, meaning Rashi writes shemitchila yotze kamachdak. I guess if you pour the flour through, so first all the fine flour will come out, and then ulvasov subin gasin. And then at the end, all the bigger ones come out. Maybe when you start mixing it, whatever, the bigger pieces come out. So that's that's the symbol to what's going on in our case with respect to the rain. And the basar mitra, pasik mitra. But if you have it at the end of the rain, then the rain's coming to an end. Simanech, the sign for that is charya di'izi, the feces of a goat. When they come out of the animal, they start thick and then turn thin. So that's the similar idea with the rain, that if it starts a lot and then thin, that means it's coming to an end.
Nice comparison.
Yes, beautiful. So now we have a few stories with Ula. So Ula ikla leBavel. Ula traveled to Bavel. Chaza porchos. So he saw these clouds, and he remembered the Gemara that siman lematar porchos. So if you see these clouds, it's going to rain. So what does he do? Amar lehu, he instructs maybe his servant or whoever he's with. Panu manai, bring my kalim, bring my utensils, bring everything inside. It's about to rain. Tahashta asimitra, the rain's coming. Lesof lo asimitra. At the end of the day, it didn't rain. So what does he say? Amar ki hechi de meshakre bavlai hachi meshakre mitrahu. The same way the Babylonians are all liars, so too their clouds lie as well. Even though
you meant the non-Jews, the Babylonians.
The bavlai, I would hope he means that.
He said they would melt in Shraga, and because of that, they're.
So what does it say there?
It says the rain was held because of those who pledge charity and do not meet their obligations.
So the Jews?
Yeah. This type of behavior.
Okay.
And so that was
so he accused the
they promised and
right.
they delivered. So the rain promised and then delivered also.
We talked about that yesterday in the Gemara. Well, we concluded yesterday's Gemara that rain doesn't fall. What happens if people pledge to give tzedakah? Well, that's in public and they don't give. So. Maybe based on a similar idea. So then another story with Ula ikla lebabel chaze malei tzana de tamri bezuza. So he found a whole bucket of dates for a zuz. Amar, and he proclaimed malei tzana to dosha bezuza. You have a full bucket of dates for a zuz. Ubavle lo aski baraisa, and they're not learning Torah. Rashi just explains ubavle lo aski kolomar yicholin ein lasok tamid. They should be in kollel all day. Sheish lahen mizonos bezol. Right, everything's cheap. Uvlo Torah, they don't have to work hard to get all their food. They're fine. So Belelia tzaruhu. Then he realized, and he ate these dates, and then at night he had a very bad stomachache. Amar, he said, Malay tzana de sakina bezuza, that they're selling a bucket of knives. Right? He's comparing the dates to knives for a zuz. Ustil ubabli aski baraisa, and they're still able to go ahead and learn Torah. That's so great for them. Rashi just says shemitoch shalochin oso bezol. Right, Ochlin mehen harbe mitzarin osan. Right, he says that they're all buying it for cheap and they're all eating it, and they're still, even though they're having these stomach pains, saying that they're still willing and they're still able to go ahead and learn Torah. They're so great. Yeah, Tanya. Now we're gonna have a brisa machlokas here, where rain comes from. Does it come from the sky or does it come from the ocean? So Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kol ha'olam kulo mimei ukainos hushosa, that the whole world drinks from water from the ocean. We're talking about the story of Adam and Chava and the story of creation, that the mist, actually is before them, right? That the mist came up, and it gave water to all the land. So Amar la Rabbi Yehoshua, how can that be? Ocean water is very salty. You can't use salt water to water all the plants. Amar lo mimatkin ba'avin. Yeah, they go up to the sky. They turn into clouds. They go through some purification process. Thank you. In the clouds, they turn sweet, and then they can go and water everything, and it makes sense. Yeah. But Rabbi Yoshua believes. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Kol ha'olam kulo mimayim ha'elyonim hushose. All water comes from shamayim. Shneimar limtar hashamayim tishtemayim. Right, that you're going to drink the water from the sky. If I'm not mistaken, right, I think the water, it's all a cycle. It comes up, it goes down, and it goes back up. So, like any good machlokas, we can say they're both right. Ella ma'ani mekayem. So what does it mean? Ve'ed ya'aleh min haaretz. So what does it mean that the mist came up from the ground? If everything comes from Shamayim. Milamed sheha'ananim misgabrim ve'olin larakia. So you have these clouds which are on the ground. They go up to Shamayim, uposchin pihen kinod, and they open up. They open themselves up. These clouds, umikabli me matar, right? And then they pour the water into the clouds. Shenamar yazoku matar leidol. They pour the water into the clouds. Umenukavos hein kikvara, and they have many tiny holes like a sieve. Ubaos, and then the water comes out through the clouds. Umechashros mayim al gabe karka, and it waters the plants on the ground. Shne'amar chashras mayim ave shechakim. Okay, and then with respect to this rain, ve'ein bein tipa letipa ela kimlo nema, and there's only about a hair's width between all of these different rain. I guess we're saying it's a very fine rain that's coming out of these clouds. Okay, now let's continue. L'lamedcha. L'lamedcha often goes on the previous Gemara. Rashi just points out L'lamedcha akrai dilakaman kai. It's referring to what we're about to teach right now. So L'lamedcha shegadol yom hageshamim ki yom shenivru bo shamayim va'aretz. So the following is going to teach us that the day that it rains is as great as the day that the world was created. Right? Yesterday we said it was as great as Kibbutz Galios, so you have a lot of comparisons. So how do we know this? Shneimar, quote psukim from Eov. Oseh gedalos ad ein cheker refers to Hashem that He does great things beyond our comprehension. Uchsiv hanosein matar, and then the next pasuk is referring to hanosein matar al pnei eretz. Hashem brings rain to the world. Uchsiv lahalan, and later on it says halo yadata, do not perceive, imo shamata, have you not heard? Elokei olam Hashem. Now comes Hashem ein cheker. Again, there's no understanding. There's no understanding His capabilities. So here, bringing the comparison of Oseg Dolos Hashem created the world, and the next pasuk talking about Hashem bringing rain. So we're almost equating the two ideas. Okay, now we're going to bring down two psukim and try to determine: are they like Rabbi Yehoshua, who says rain comes from Shamayim, or are they like Rabbi? Or are they like Rabbi Eliezer, who says rain comes from the ground? So Kiman Azlaha Dichsiv, who does the following pasuk called like Mashke Harim Me Al Yosav, that the mountains will almost drink from the upper realms. Rabbi Yochanan Me Al Yosav Shakadosh Baruch Hu, Me Al Yosav means the upper realms of Hashem. So referring to the sky. So Kiman Rabbi Yeshua, this must be referring to Rabbi Yeshua again, who says that all rain comes from Shamayim. So Rabbi Eliezer says no. Kevan desalki lahasam. No, since again the rains start, because it comes from the bottom, comes from the ocean, and then goes up, and then you can say it comes back down. So Kevan desalki lahasam mashke ma'al yosav kari lahu. It is considered that it came from Shamayim. Because if you don't say this, so we have another pasuk, avak ve'afar min Shamayim, that dirt and dust comes from Shamayim. How can that be? How can you have such a situation? Ela kevan dematli lahasam, since again it came from the earth and went up to Shamayim, mina Shamayim karilei. So hachinami with respect to the rain as well. Kevan desalki lahasam me'al yosaf karilei. Since it came from the ground that went up, we're going to call it that it came from the Shamayim. Now another pasuk, Kiman Az Lahadam Rabbi Chanina, who is the following pasuk like Kones Kineid Me Hayam, that the waters of the Yam, of the ocean, of the sea, will gather together Kineid in some sort of pillar. Right? I think that's a similar word that's used when they crossed the Jordan, that the water was B'nei Echad, that the water formed some sort of pillar, and the Jewish people were able to cross through. So Kones Kanei Hayam Nosein Be'otzaros Tehomos, and that fills up the storage houses. Tehomos are from the depths. So how do we explain that? Mi garam le'otzaros shishmalu bar. Who causes the storage houses to be full? So Tehomos, the depths is where it causes everything, brings the rain, causes everything to grow. So who is this like? Rabbi Eliezer. This must be like Rabbi Eliezer, who says all the rain comes from the ground. For Rabbi Yeshua, he says no. Hahu bivriyaso shel olam. That pasuk was referring to the when the world was created, and then the water came from the bottom. But since then, almost we can say that all water comes from Shamayim. Have a good day. Have a good Shabbat.